We talked about the Furia buff that's coming next update in the last video. Now it's time to talk about the Barik buffs. Now in case you don't know about the buffs, I'll go ahead and go over them for you real quick. Barik's Blunderbuss is receiving improved damage consistency and reduced falloff. Keep in mind this only affects his base weapon, not Tinkerin. His barricade duration is going from 4 to 5 seconds, and its cooldown is being reduced from 15 to 12 seconds. His Rocket Boots cooldown is also being reduced from 14 to 12 seconds. Then finally his ultimate damage is going up from 400 to 600 per second. Now along with all of those cooldown reduction buffs, the cards that also reduce the cooldowns of those abilities were nerfed. Basically they wanted to take some of the power from these cards and put them in the base kit. So don't worry, it's not a nerf. It's more of a power shift, but you could call it a buff. Now let's talk about this stuff. His Blunderbuss feels way better. It is a night and day difference. His max falloff with it is 250, but you need to hit at least 2 or 3 pellets to get that, and that's of course pretty easy. It's possible to only deal 100 if you only land 1 or 2 pellets. I'm not positive on the exact pellet counts, that's why I'm giving you 2 numbers, so you can have an idea. 250 is definitely really solid poke for a tank. You start to hit that number at the mid-range. At closer ranges, you're of course hitting the 500. Base Blunderbuss is also of course hit scan, so it can crit unlike Tinkerin. So you could be doing up to 750 damage per bullet. Makes 1v1ing certain other tanks a lot easier. Since a few of them do have really big heads, it is easy to constantly land those crits. Now I do think Tinkerin is still the better damage option. You do more damage at longer distances, with the only downside being it's a projectile, so you have to lead your slugs a bit, but that's hardly a downside. The Blunderbuss buff isn't really supposed to make it rival Tinkerin or anything. It's mainly supposed to make it so you can pick other talents besides Tinkerin and not really have a lackluster weapon. I do think it succeeds in doing that, partly. Barik got a lot of barricade buffs in his base kit, and that of course makes Fortify better, and I do think it's possible for Fortify to become a viable option. You're going to be able to put up a very beefy barrier very often, making it even more difficult to kill Barik than it already is. Because currently, Barik's self-sustain is really good. Despite him having way less health, he can contest the other main tanks Anara and Terminus rather well, better than you'd think he'd be able to at first glance. Of course, Wrecker is a thing, but that doesn't stop other viable barrier talents like Half Shell or Fortress Breaker from being good. What makes those good is that you can use them more often than the other barrier talents. And Fortify is in that boat now, I'd say. And that's because Fortify itself also reduces the cooldown of Barricade, so if you pair that with the cooldown reduction buff, you're getting 9-second cooldown barricades. And that's without any card or Chronos investment. And that's really good. Now earlier I said the Blunderbuss buff only partly makes other talents viable, because even though I think Fortify can become a viable option, I don't think Architectonics will, because Architectonics didn't receive any buffs that directly or indirectly improved it. No turret cards were partly put into the base kit, and the talent itself wasn't amped up in any way. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't expecting Barik's cooldowns to get reduced, but I was really expecting Architectonics to get buffed. So I was really surprised to see it not be improved in any way, because it's definitely his weakest talent and I don't see that becoming any different out of the blue. Once the update comes out and Barik gets played for a while, we can probably push for a direct Architectonics buff. And don't say hit scan turrets, guys. That is not gonna happen. That talent was so broken back when it made the turrets hit scan. Barik was doing like 150k damage in a normal length game, rivaling DPS characters. And he of course didn't have as much survivability back then either, so imagine hit scan turrets with all the survivability Barik has now. I would be terrified. I do want to talk about the ultimate buff a bit. So the reason this was buffed is because enemies can sort of walk into your bubble and not care about the damage. At least tanks can. For squishies to do it, Barik has to be really low, or they have to be Torv bubbled or heal pocketed or something. Tanks can sorta do it whenever they want because they have so much health. Certain tanks bully Barik out of his bubble very easily. Most tanks honestly do, but some do it better than others. Now unfortunately I didn't really get to test his ult against tanks. Tanks aren't exactly a hot commodity on the PTS. If there was a tank, it was Barik. And Barik wasn't really a tank that'd walk into another Barik's ult before the buff anyway. So you can imagine he's definitely not doing it now. I don't plan to play the PTS again because the audio on it is really wonky, so I won't be able to test it out against other tanks until the update comes out. But I do think there's going to be a lot less tanks walking into Barik's ultimate. Inara probably still will because of her DR, Makoa probably still will because of all of his health and his ultimate, but other tanks will probably be more weary when it comes to stepping into Barik's domain. But yeah, all these buffs are definitely going to work wonders for him. When I was playing against him on the PTS, he definitely seemed harder to kill than normal, both when playing as him and playing against him. I only did a few games though, and PTS games are kinda meh because they lack matchmaking, so I didn't get a perfect idea of how Barik is. There was a game where I barely got contested, and there was another game where I was basically always contested, but their Barik wasn't. So yeah, it is hard to get that perfect idea, but I got an okay one. In a real game as opposed to the PTS, people would be applying pressure to Barik a lot more, and that's really what I want to base his newly buffed survivability on. How much better is he at surviving when he's put under pressure? That's the big question I want answered to see if he really does end up being overpowered or not. And yeah, I definitely hear those of you that are saying that. Like I said, I was not expecting base kit cooldown reduction buffs. I was expecting a weapon, ultimate Fortify, and Architectonics buff. Sometime after the AOC's conversation with them about Barik, I guess they decided to do cooldown buffs. I think for the majority of the community, the cooldown buffs won't be felt too much, but I definitely can see how Barik could end up becoming too powerful at higher levels. A completely personal opinion of mine is I think it'd be cool to see Barik have his time at the top again. We haven't really seen him at the top since Architectonics was hitscan. But personal opinions aside of course, yes, I do also have concerns that he could end up being too powerful, and if that happens, I'm positive adjustments will be made to remedy that. For now though, I am very excited to see Barik get so much love in one update. A lot of buffs, an amazing skin, and an amazing recolor of that skin. If you've been contemplating picking up Barik, the Steelforged update is definitely the time to do so. So please, when the update comes out, give Barik a go and let me know what you guys think about him. Of course, if you would like to, you can give me your initial thoughts on Barik right now in the comments below. And that's pretty much it guys, I want to thank you all for watching, I very much appreciate it, and I'm gonna see you guys later. Bye.